Hi, I'm Gemma Craven.
And I'm Jeffrey Colon.
And welcome to the Wednesday Word. It's Thursday the 19th, but it's still Wednesday in our eyes. And today we're going to be talking about the Olympics. The Olympics starts next week on Friday in London. And in the run-up to the event, we're seeing a huge amount around the activities of the IOC and preparations for the Games. And Jeffrey, we wanted to take some time today to talk about this huge sporting event and how social has become an intertwined part of the fabric of the Games. So what has the IOC done to really set up infrastructure for the Games this year?
Well, they've really gone above and beyond. There's a whole athletes hub, which is this online social destination that they launched back in April. They also have a Twitter presence, a Facebook presence. They have an Olympic challenge page that's supposed to launch. That's an interactive presence online. 3 Tumblr pages, and also an interaction with Instagram. So obviously they're using a lot of the well-known social properties out there to try and make this really the first social games as we know it.
And I mean, it's amazing how this has changed from the last Games, and indeed from the last big sporting event, as we were talking about, which was really the World Cup, which was really when we saw how social has become an intrinsic part of large-scale sporting events, such as the Olympics and a World Soccer tournament. So an interesting thing, really, when you're looking at anything involving teams and athletes and players, is that there's so many components to this. So when working with a large-scale infrastructure like this, how has the IOC gone about helping athletes know what to comment on, tweet about? You know, how are they actually policing that?
Well, they've sent out guidelines to each athlete, basically telling them that there's certain things they can talk about, and then there's other things that are 100% off limits. So a big thing that are off limits for athletes is they're not allowed to share video and specific photos of them participating, and I think a lot of this falls into the fact that the Olympic Committee wants most of that content generated from their end that they share within social. Mm-hmm. But obviously they're not going to prevent an athlete from possibly tweeting that they're in the locker room about to get ready for their event. Those are things that people actually find interesting because they're able to sort of follow along with the athlete as they prepare for participation.
And NBC announced a big sync up with Facebook around the Olympics to really make Facebook a destination for conversations around the game. So I can see why there is this protectionism. But how are they going to police these guidelines? I'm sure there's thousands of athletes. I find it hard to understand how they would actually be doing that.
You know, I think that. Only in extreme circumstances are they going to really come down heavy on particular athletes. I think if there's certain things that are shared that really, as you said, go against the wishes of broadcast partners, they're probably going to call that athlete aside and ask them that they don't tweet at all for the remainder of the week. Maybe they take away some sort of privileges of some type. I mean, it's very difficult. It's not even just limited to the Olympics. I think all sporting leagues now have this issue that they have to talk about because they want the advantage of using their athletes to drive earned word of mouth, but they also want them to stay within limitations so they're not offending their broadcast partners who they get a lot of revenue and money from, as well as sponsorships. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, athletes nowadays are so far removed from the athletes of yesterday. They are brands and they do understand the sensibility. This week saw the blackout of any ad campaigns, any commercials that featured Olympic athletes if the brand was not an official Olympic sponsor. And mm-hmm. Athletes nowadays understand the importance of the sponsorship dollar and the allegiance with brands. So I think we'll see less of the those comments that may be damaging to an athlete's personal brand, because that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things is most athletes will probably stay in line with the blackout because they don't want to offend possible sponsorship deals. So they won't tweet certain things. You may get that one rare case of an athlete who says, "I'm just going to go for the gold in terms of generating press for themselves,"
right,
and releases some information that the Olympic Committee is not happy about. But in the interim, they build their own personal brand because maybe they're not well known. They come from maybe a country that they're not known for a particular sport. There's going to be at least one or two of those infractions. And I think the Olympic Committee will deal with that on a case-by-case basis.
And I do hope that athletes are ready for, my dear UK media. The tabloids were very well known for the snarkier side of reporting. And I know stories of athletes in the past that have been goaded by journalists to try and get a story out them. So UK press, I hope you're going to be kinder to the athletes this year, but I'm sure you're not. But I mean, the other thing I think is there's so much around the Olympics as well, from the British weather to the transportation in London. So it's going to be really interesting to see the kind of real-time conversations that are coming out of the spectators as well as the actual athletes themselves.
That's right. I mean, the one thing that the Olympic Committee can't control is everyone who's there to participate as a spectator. So they can't prevent those people from videotaping specific events and sharing that on their social networks. And I'm just curious to see what the sentiment is coming out of, during the games in terms of the traffic, the weather. As we know, for all of us who've ever been to London, possible, tube outages are. I mean, I heard that the metro is going to go on strike next week. There's all types of strife that could happen that really drives a lot of negative conversation, and that again is something that. There's not really a lot of control in the earned space, and as we've talked about before on Wednesday Word, as long as they sort of just roll with it and do the best that they can in terms of crisis management and just let people say what they say. I mean, that's just the world that we live in now.
It sure is. Well, whatever comes out of it, the Olympics 2012 is going to be a great example of this converged media. So it's paid, owned and earned media all in one place. And I think it's going to be really so interesting to see what happens over the month of the Olympics and do a follow-up when the Olympics is done.
Yeah, sounds great. I'm looking forward to it in terms of just seeing not just how much activity there is on Twitter, but also to see how much engagement there is on some of these other platforms like Instagram, and to see how many extra videos are shared, and just to see some of that extra sentiment that occurs around the games itself. It should be interesting. I think all eyes definitely are on London beginning next week.
Okay, thanks, Jeffrey. That was the Wednesday Word. We'll see you next week.